Hi again. This time we jump to Asia. We are proud to have a Japanese speaker among all of these renowned world speakers of aesthetic dentistry. I'm happy to present Dr. Yoon Iwata. Dr. Yoon graduated in 2005 at the Kagoshima University in Japan. He then got his PhD degree in 2009 from the Osaka University. Nowadays, he runs since 2016 his own private practice. Yoon is a master of composite and will present a lecture about the tips for aesthetic posterior composite restorations. We are all looking forward for this. Let's hear Dr. Yoon Iwata. Já está, sim.
Saltaste aquela parte.
Para saltar, é indiferente onde o gajo tem a clínica, sei lá onde é que é aquela...
Hello everyone, my name is Jun Iwata. I am a Japanese dentist and have my private practice in Hyogo, Japan, which is about 1 hour drive from Kyoto. I am very happy that I have this opportunity to give the presentation to you. I hope that you will enjoy my presentation. Okay, let's start and hope that everything is working okay. Short introduction about me. I graduated from Dental University in 2005 and had postgraduate studies in restorative dentistry department for 5 years. And after that, I worked at the dental office, offered one of the best treatments in Japan, specialized in prosthetic restoration. And from 2016, I started my private practice in the town I was raised. And right now, I am recording the movie in the office, which is my first experience. These are pictures of my office. It is rare to have individual private room to treat patients in Japan, but I designed it this way. I think it is comfortable for patients and also for me. And using dental cone beam computed tomography and microscope, I am enjoying my daily practice focusing on accurate examination, diagnosis, and precise treatment. Before having my private office, I worked under Dr. Matsukawa, who is the pioneer of the microscope dentistry in Japan, who has all kinds of great skills including the aesthetic implant treatment, and Dr. Honda, who is like pioneer and history of Japanese occlusion. I learned many things from these great doctors. Dr. Matsukawa and Dr. Honda also have great skills in tooth preparation. I practiced a lot to try to reach to their skills, which I am still working on it. Great doctors. First started from single crown and then move on to the anterior teeth. Practiced to prepare the tooth in symmetry with opposite tooth. And practiced tooth preparation of multiple teeth. Consciously confirming the shape of the abutment teeth is aligned continuously. Also, posterior tooth preparation. I carefully controlled the preparation so that aesthetic function and cleansability will be achieved. I have practiced a lot of preparations until now. Cases that have been restored by bridge. Root fracture was found in the right upper central incisor and diagnosed the teeth hopeless. The case of full mouth treatment, including anterior teeth, have completed. case was restored by zirconia crown and bridge. Temporarily adhesive the crown to re-evaluate periodontal tissues. No problem found during the follow-up and the restoration were cemented. In this case, these were multiple defective restorations that needed to be retreated, the case of occlusal reconstructions. The defective restorations were mostly placed in the posterior area. Poor design of the occlusal surface and the unstable condition of the occlusion. After the treatment, both central and lateral incisors were restored by porcelain laminate veneers, and left canine was restored by zirconia crown. Frontal view and posterior teeth were restored by ceramic inlay and zirconia crowns. Picture of lateral movement. Slight amount of composite resin were added to the cusp of both right canine and left lower canine. Suitable disclosure of the posterior area due to the achieved anterior guidance and occlusal surface of the posterior teeth were adjusted to provide stable maximum intercuspation and occlusal contact. Adequate preparation to preserve the dental pulp and considering the biologic with restoration with high cleansability was achieved. After graduating the dental university and joining the restorative department during my undergraduate periods, I did almost all the laboratory work by myself. Back to the story, background why I became so interested in the composite restoration. After graduating the dental university and joining the restorative department during my undergraduate periods, I did almost all the laboratory works by myself. At that time, I recognized that to achieve higher skills in prosthetic restorative treatments, it was necessary to understand and have a skill to duplicate the shape of the natural teeth. So every day I was carving the stone models to duplicate the shapes of the natural teeth. Carving the stone models to duplicate the shape of the teeth and doing the laboratory works as my routine works for 5 years. Gradually, I achieved a deep understanding about the shape of the teeth and became more interested in clinical dentistry. This is the case of anterior wax-up. From the carving the stone models and making the wax-up, the image of tooth structures in my mind became very clear. And the example of posterior wax-up. Checking the occlusion, you need to care about the cusp and the pit of the opposite tooth and form the occlusal surface of the wax-up. You need to care the marginal ridge also so that it will not interfere during the lateral movement and masticatory movement. And around this period, I began to have deep interest in composite resin also. At that time, I made a lot of samples using composite resin to gain my skills in these fields. To duplicate 4 structures of the tooth, that is, from the root to coronal parts, were very useful for me to practice and learning layering technique. I also made customized model by myself and have practiced the layering technique repeatedly. Same model, and this is the case practicing to build up the teeth on the anterior area with composite resin. I was measured the time to see how I was improving and practiced repeatedly. Thinking back now, it was a really good experience I had during my postgraduate periods. This is the case of the anterior teeth. The midline were filled with defective composite resin. Considering the balance of the 6 upper anterior teeth, medial and distal parts of both upper central incisors were restored by composite resin. Picture to see the balance of the lip and teeth. This is the case of class 4 composite resin restoration in both central incisors. Patient complaints were to improve the color of the teeth and to fix the restoration placed on the midline area. For the initial treatment, I cleaned the teeth and bleached the teeth to improve the color. Few weeks passed after the bleaching. Wait until the shade of the teeth to be stable condition. Next step was to retreat the discolored composite resin. For the shade selection, temporarily cured composite resin were placed on the teeth surface. No bonding procedure, just to check the shade. Cross-polarization filters was used to check the shade in detail, eliminating the reflection on the teeth caused by flash on the camera. And now the rubber dam was placed to prevent the moist, and the worn restoration were removed. And selective etching only etched to the enamel area of the teeth. After the pre-adhesive procedures, silicone index was used to transfer the shape of the wax-up, and for the layering procedure, initially layers of the lingual wall were made with the composite resin in enamel shade. Removing the silicone index, the composite resin was cured from the lingual side. Next, layering the proximal surface. In case like this, which object teeth positioned next to each other, better access will be achieved to recover the interproximal contact points by layering the cavity prep individually. So I began with right central incisor. Checking the adaptation of the matrix from the lateral side. Layering the proximal surface and connecting with the lingual wall. And next is layering the composite resin in enamel shade to the proximal surface of left central incisor. First slide in the matrix and try in the interdental wedge. Adjust the shape of the interdental wedge so it fits well into the cervical area. Confirming the adaptation of the matrix and interdental wedge from the lateral side. It is important to check the fitness from the different angles. Once again, start layering to the proximal surface. After removing the matrix and wedge. From the frontal view, area around the interproximal contact point were recovered properly. And layering the first layer of the composite resin in dentin shade, and then layering the secondary layer of composite resin in dentin shade, and at this point adding marmelon also to the tooth surface. And switch to the composite resin in enamel shade to layer the labial side. Insert the tape into the proximal area and cover the surface of left central incisor, which will be layered later. All parts of labial side of right central incisor were layered with the composite resin shade in enamel. After layering the labial side of the left central incisor, and now both central incisors were filled with composite resin. Placing the air barrier to the surface of the restorations, apply enough light to cure the composite resin completely. And the next step is the adjustment and polishing, marking the reach of the labial groove to check the surface and the shape of the composite restoration. After the final polishing, treatment has been completed. If necessary, place a powder to the surface of the restoration to confirm the texture of the labial surface. Few days after the procedure, filling material has adapted into the oral condition and the shades were well balanced. Relation of the final restoration and lip are well balanced and texture of the restoration fit well with other anterior teeth. And from here, I would like to move on to the main topics. Today, I would like to talk about the composite restorative treatment in the posterior zone. Title of today's lecture is The Tips for Aesthetic Posterior Composite Restorations. I divide it in two contents. I will be talking about the characteristics of the posterior occlusal surface and the tips to duplicate the posterior occlusal surface, layering techniques and clinical steps for Class 1 and Class 2 cavity prep, and recommended materials and instruments for aesthetic posterior composite restorations. In recent years, from the point of minimum invasive treatment, composite restorative treatment gathers big attention in dental treatment. Nowadays, there are many very good bonding materials and composite resin available in the market, so what will be key factors to have good results in composite restorative treatments. This is a picture of natural teeth. For anterior composite restoration treatments, total external form of the teeth and the texture of the buccal surface of the teeth will be the very important key factors, because transparency, diffusion, and reflection of light going through the tooth will be affected by the textures of the tooth surface. So textures of tooth surface have great influence to determine the shade of the teeth. And for the posterior teeth, on the occlusal surface, you will find the ridge, groove, pit, and fissures, and the shape are complicated with three-dimensional difference in height, consists of the lot of concave and convex. You need to have the clear image of these forms before focusing the case. These are the pictures of the upper and lower first molar. You can see the natural grooves and pits and fissures are made by the ridge facing each other. Groove is not running in the straight line, but as like a river, gently separated to different way, gently from the main groove, leading to the subgroove. So how we should add the form and layer the Class 1 cavity prep? There are many patterns on the occlusal surface and the shape differ from one to another, but there are certain rules that we can use as reference. The position of the central pit will become reference, so let's look how we can determine the position of the central pit. Okay, now let's look at the occlusal surface of upper first molar. Check the position of marginal ridge in dark green line and the cusp tip in blue dots. Connecting the line of four cusp tips, it's parallelogram shaped. And checking the point where buccal development groove and the line of the marginal ridge join together, which I marked the spot in red dot. And now draw a straight line from major lingual cusp tip to the red point. Then draw a parallel line in major distal direction, including major buccal cusp tip and major lingual cusp tip, the line in red. Draw a line angle 90 degrees against these parallel lines, the line showed in black. And the same distance from the both red line, draw a green line. Where extended the green line across the line made from connecting major lingual cusp tip and the red point. This spot will mostly be position of central pit. Next, let's look at how grooves are running. Groove running from central pit to buccal development groove, and the line connecting major buccal cusp tips and distal buccal cusp tip is angled less than 90 degrees. The line connecting major lingual cusp pit and distal buccal cusp pit. And draw the line from the central pit that cross with the line connecting major lingual cusp pit and distal lingual angle 90 degrees and 3.5 mm away towards the distal side, where mostly to be position of the distal lingual pit. And the groove will extend it from distal lingual pit to distal buccal groove and lingual development groove. The central groove running from central pit to major direction. Mainly the buccal development groove runs with the same angle of the distal side. Half the distance of distal central groove mostly will be position of major pit, which marked in purple. And towards the edge of the major marginal ridge, groove runs in two different ways. These will be main characteristics of groove and pit on the surface of upper first molar. And now let's look at the occlusal surface of the lower first molar. Area of marginal ridge are indicated in dark green line. First, to determine the buccal lingual position of the central pit. The position is center of the line drawn buccal lingually from the marginal ridge. Now determine the major distal position. Decide the position by following the ridge of the distal buccal cusp tip. If region is big and you don't have a clear image, then follow the ridge of axial surface. Connected point of the line made by dividing the marginal ridge in two and extend the line of the distal buccal cusp tip ridge will mostly be the area of the central pit, slightly positioned distal from the lingual surface groove. Now select the direction of three groups running from the central pit. Lingual groove is running to the direction of distal buccal marginal ridge. And with the two lines running towards the major is around 100 to 120 degrees. The length of each group will be at the distal buccal group around 1.5 mm, lingual group around 1.3 mm, and major buccal group less than 1.3 mm, mostly shorter than distal buccal group. length of the major buccal groove is related to the buccal development groove, and major distal parallel or ended on distal side. If there are four cusps, major buccal groove will be shallow, and in some cases it does not appear. In one shape groove from each pit. To the marginal ridge, groove continues to run connecting the fissure. Each will make some curves, but in the end major buccal groove will run towards major buccal direction. Lingual groove run towards lingual direction, and distal buccal groove run towards distal buccal direction. The central groove running towards major direction from the central pit have one more pit, almost aligned with the central pit in major distal direction, and mostly appear about 2.0 mm inside from the edge of marginal ridge. And from the information of the groove appears at major distal marginal ridge, the central groove will be extended. Groove running from the major buccal pit to buccal side run towards the corner of major buccal marginal ridge. In the end, it will divide in two ways, the buccal side and to major direction, changing to shallow groove and disappear. Now we went through the grooves, pit and fissures on the occlusal surface of upper and lower molar. First of all, learning these images and balance, gradually you will be able to understand three-dimensional structural design of the posterior occlusal surface. Initially, I would like to talk about Class 1 composite restorative treatment. Regarding the layering technique on the occlusal surface, as everyone knows, one technique is increment placement, that is to individually layering the composite resin to occlusal point, and the another technique is to place a bulk fill composite resin to the cavity prep. First, I would like to show the case I did by incremental placement and share with you the benefits and the disadvantages of this layering technique. This is the case I have done way back ago, composite restorative treatment in first molar. After the cavity prep. While layering the composite individually to each cusp, the biggest difference compared to my style now is that I did not use rubber dam at the time. I treated this case and filling the prep by avoiding saliva only with the saliva ejector. After layering the composite resin in enamel shade, the image you need to have during this procedure is to provide the natural-like groove, pit and fissures by contacting the edge of the ridge against the edge of the ridge, like to squeeze into each other. There was stain on the adjacent tooth, so I provided the stain also on the pit and fissure of the restoration. Also, in this case, I layered the composite individually to each cusp. Problem with this the case when some problem occurs during layering procedure and the shape of the ridge is likely to swell out, and in some cases you need to spend a lot of time adjusting the occlusal point after layering the composites. This is the teeth model made by one of my mentors, Dr. Masaki Honda. It shows ideal relationship of intercuspal position on the first molar, When layering the composite resin, if the composite resin placed on the ridge area swell out, relationships of intercuspal position will not to be in this way, and you need to have it in this way, and you need to have it. From this experience, I started to think that I need to change the way to layer the composite so the form will be more likely to be like naturalities after layering the composite to minimize the occlusal adjustment. Let's say area colored in blue is class 1 cavity, with layering incremental placement. When layering the composite resin to the region, if layered to each cusp individually, each area are likely to swell out, and you need to have extra time for occlusal adjustment. When I was looking for different techniques for the composite restorative treatment, I had a chance to meet with Dr. Tetsuya Aoshima. Seeing his clinical cases and presentation, I changed my layering technique. It is still uncommon to use rubber dam for the composite restorative treatment in Japan, but learning the technique from bioemulsion member Dr. Aoshima and Dr. David Geldor, I adopted it in my daily practice. This is the case right after I started to use the bulk fill technique I learned from Dr. Aoshima, technique to layer the prep with bulk fill composite resin. Due to the aesthetic reason, class 1 metal inlay on tooth 46 and 47 were removed and retrieved the prep by composite restoration. As I learned, I started to use rubber dam in my case to prevent the moist and remove the metal inlay. Selective enamel etching just to the surface of the enamel. I confirmed the rubber dam was not placed correctly, so adjust the clamp. Wash out the etching gels and dry the surface. And the priming and adhesive procedure follows, applying bonding on surface of enamel and dentine. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions and find out how long you have to wait and air blow the surface. And light cure the bonding. After going through all these procedures, surface of the dentine on the cavity prep, I place the flowable resin in dentine shade, features high chroma, and packing the cavity prep with the composite resin in dentine shade, presented in paste form. Using some instrument like probe to check if there are adequate space left for layering composite resin in shade of enamel. And this was after layering composite resin in enamel shade to the prep. Lateral view. I have not light cured the resin yet. Using the finishing instrument, 間違えた。フィリングですね。ごめんなさい。Using the filling instruments that have very thin flat tip, I prepared the shape of occlusal surface with the composite resin. The composite resin was not still cured at this point. Existence two structures like peak of the occlusal point. Groove and pit fissure will be the reference to determine the shape of the restoration. These will give you better image, what you need to provide, and be careful to check the finishing line is covered enough by the composite resin to prevent the underfilling of the material. Once again, lateral view after the preparation using the thin flat instruments. It is necessary to check from all kinds of angles to review the shape of the structure is natural or not. By observing carefully, you can save your time and extra work of following procedures like preparation or occlusal adjustments, and the aesthetic outcome. And using the endodontic files, size around 10, just a little amount of the stain material for the composite resin were applied on the surface of the pit and fissure. The tip of the file was used to place the stain, moving the file from the center of restoration to outwards so that composite will form in gentle curvature. In this way, you are able to add stain and adjust the shape of the pit and fissure of the composite restoration. Lateral view of the tooth. If no problem with the shape, show the quick temporary light cure to the restoration to temporarily harden the composite. And from here to add sensitive concave and convex form to the restoration to express such as subocclusal ridge to the surface. Slight amount of soft composite resin presented in paste form were placed on the area surrounding the ridge. The occlusal view after placing the composite materials. Using the micro brush and fine tips brush to level the added resin smoothly and adjust the form of the restoration to final shape. Lateral view after the procedure, you can confirm the composite resin adapted to the surface of the remaining tooth structures naturally. And after the temporary light cure, placing the air barrier to the restoration. Apply enough light to cure the composite completely. After the rubber dam removal, this is right after the treatment. A week after the treatment, the patient visited me to check the occlusal contact points. The sagittal plane of the posterior tooth compared to the incremental placement technique. After layering the bulk fill composite resin, adjust the form to slightly sharpen the angle compared to ideal angle of cusp inclination and flatten the condition. And add slight amount of composite resin in enamel shade to the central groove and secondary ridge, and by doing this able to adjust the form adequately. More natural and save time to adjust occlusal contact compared to incremental technique. This is also the case I treated right after I began to use the layering technique, using bulk fill composite materials to fill the prep. Because of the aesthetic reason, metal inlay on the right lower molar was removed and the prep was refilled with the composite restorative treatment. After the composite filling, from the occlusal surface to the buccal side of the tooth was restored by composite resin. Lateral view of the composite restoration. At this time, I was not used to this layering technique yet, and so you can confirm that ridge and sub-ridge of the occlusal surface were not well duplicated and kind of flat shaped. This is another case, placing rubber dam to prevent moist, followed by cavity prep and cleaning the tooth surface. Selective etching technique to the enamel surface. After the rinsing drying, bonding, and light curing procedures. Filling the prep with bulk fill composite resin in enamel shade. Applying the cusp angle and removing the overfilled composite resin. Roughly design and position the cusp and ridge, and also roughly apply fissure on the surface. And from the image of the existing structure, prepare and adjust the composite resin more likely to be natural. Now the restoration is ready for final adjustment. Applying slight amount of dark brown stain to the tip of the file and correct the shape and adding stain to the fissure of composite restoration. Final light cure. Right after the filling was completed. And now for the polishing. Roughly polish the surface with number 28 brown silicone polishers. Final polishing was done by Diacomb plus twist from the eave. Right after the final polishing. Same patient had another filling on the opposite side of the arch. Same procedures and treated with composite resin. Occlusal surface was duplicated three-dimensionally with natural-like occlusal ridge, subocclusal ridge, groove, pit, and fissure. Another case of posterior composite restoration. Occlusal surface of the first molar was filled with defective composite resin. As you can see, defective filling materials was placed in the wide range including the buccal area. After the cavity prep, the range of the region continuously exists from the occlusal surface towards the buccal side. For the case like this, it will be much easier to start layering from the buccal side and light cure the composite resin on the area and make the region class 1 and layer the remaining area. After layering and curing the buccal side, shape was carefully designed so that the form will fit to the form of the class 1 filling that will be treated later continuously. After layering and curing the class 1 prep, from the groove of the occlusal surface towards the groove of the buccal surface, with a gentle curvature, the groove was made in one continuous line. And after checking the occlusal contact point and completing the polishing, fissure, groove, and submarginal ridge are well expressed three-dimensionally. This is the case of class 1 premolar. Regarding the premolar, the procedure is the same as the treatment of the molar. By the way, and shade taking, after the cavity prep, place little amount of the resin to the surface, without any bonding procedures, just temporarily cure the resin to check the color. In most cases, color will change before and after curing composite resin. Cross-polarization filter is also useful to check the shade. But for the case of the posterior fillings, there are products available in the market that is easy to adapt the color without shading checking. Composite resin in shade enamel, universal enamel 1 from Michelin, and occlusal enamel from Tokuyama are good products for posterior fillings. And from here, I would like to talk about Class 2 composite restorations, because the case will include the proximal area, which means recovery of the interproximal contact point will be necessary. So the tools like matrix, wedge, and contact ring will be necessary. Regarding the height of the marginal ridge, reference will be the height of the marginal ridge of the adjacent tooth. If the form of the marginal ridge was not in good shape or also need to be restored, in that case, before the cavity prep, measure the distance from the cervical margin, and distance from the cusp pit will also be the reference. And recognizing the height of the matrix is also important to have a clear image how many millimeters will be composite resin will be filled to from the edge of the matrix. And using the interdental wedge and the contact ring to place the matrix to the properly position. This is the case of filling two premolars that positioned side by side after the adequate cavity prep. Try-in of the proximal matrix and interdental wedge. Very important things here is that to strictly check the position of the proximal contact area and how teeth and matrix are fitting to each other. Case of Class 2 cavity, which defected teeth positioned next to each other. First, fill the proximal area of one cavity and remove one matrix away. With this procedure, it will prevent from losing too much of remaining tooth structures in proximal contact area. If it is necessary, slide in the additional wedge from the buccal or lingual side. Use the side which is easy to slide in the wedge. This will tighten the space between tooth and matrix. After removing the matrix and wedge, now cavity turned out to be Class 1. And now filling of the composite in dentin shade. Placing bulk fill composite resin in enamel shade. Roughly prepared the shape of the occlusal surface. And the final adjustment using the files and stain material to correct the shape. If necessary, apply submarginal ridge to the surface, which depends on the cases. And polishing after the fillings. Try not to touch the proximal area as possible, the area recovered by interdental wedge and matrix. The place surface is changing from the resin to natural teeth is fair to polish. Remove the steps between the resin and the natural tooth with polishing disc. Depending on the area to polish, change the polishing surface of the disc, inside or outside. For the posterior teeth, small and thin disc makes easier to polish. First, pre-polish with the brown silicone point. And final polishing with diamond silicone rubber disc. After the final polishing. Next case of upper first molar. The case was retreatment of the secondary caries, and the amount of the remaining tooth structures of the proximal areas were small. Even in the case like this, the big Class 2 cavity case, if the adequate proximal matrix wedge, and the contact rings are used, it is possible to restore the tooth with composite resin. Another case. In this case, tooth 24 and 26 were restored by composite resin, and tooth 25 was restored by crown. First of all, I removed the metal inlay and the caries of the tooth 26. Quite a big cross-tooth cavity, but the crown was not pressed on adjacent tooth 25 yet. Therefore, there is enough space for the comfortable fillings, preparation and polishing. Same procedure the tooth 24 also. First of all, fill the proximal area with the composite resin, and then cavity will be class 1. And the next step will be filling of the occlusal surface area. And for tooth 25, tooth was treated by root canal treatment and core build-up. After following the case with provisional restoration, and we did not face any problem, so switched to final restoration. And now I went through the case I prepared for this lecture, and from here I would like to share with you the material I use for composite restorative treatment. Composite resin I use in my daily practice are the composite resin from Michelin, Tokuyama, and Kawakar group. Filling instruments are the products from LM Dental such as LM Arte. And to apply fissure to occlusal surface, I use filling instrument from Helmut 13Ti, 14Ti. On the left is the LM Arte applicator. Width is 1.6 mm, and on the right is 13Ti by Helmut. Compared to LM Arte applicator, width of the working tips of 13Ti is narrow diameter around 1.1 mm. I use both items. When I need to make the wide grooves, I use LM, and if I have to add sensitive grooves and gentle curvature, I use Helmut. Both are very useful items to apply fissures on the posterior teeth. For the fillings of the class 2 cavity prep matrix, I am using a transparent matrix from Kawakar group. Because of its transparency, it is possible to check the position and height of the margin ridge of the adjacent tooth while filling the tooth with composite. For the wedge and contact rings, I use V3 or V4 kit from Triodent. Preparation and polishing of the class 2 cavity, especially of the proximal area, I use ultra-thin sulfuric disc by 3M. And for final polishing, I use dia comp brush twists from Eve. These are the materials I am using recently for composite restoration. Okay, at last, short conclusion. For the aesthetic posterior composite restorative treatment, you need to understand the anatomy of the posterior teeth and have an image in mind so that you can express the shape. Shape of the occlusal surface are complicated with ridge, groove, pit, and fissure with three-dimensional concave and convex. I think it is easy to start from understanding the direction of grooves and draw a picture of occlusal surface. If you are able to draw the grooves in good balance without seeing anything, you are starting to have a clear image of the structure. And the next steps, will be how to express the three-dimensional form of the occlusal surface. As I introduced to you in the slide, use instrument with thin flat working tip to add adequate angle to the occlusal surface and remove the overfilled resin frequently. When adding angle, adding the groove, and shaping the groove with endodontic files, you need to remove the overfilled resin. And the type of composite resin to add at the end of layering. Select from paste type resin with high consistency or low flow resin with high wear resistance and adapt to the resin layer underneath. Amount that I place is around size of diamond round burr size 1/4 and eliminate the scratches during the layering to avoid additional adjustment and polishing. And this is it for today's lecture. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. URL of my website and my email address are introduced in slide. I hope that in my lecture there are some tips that you are able to use in your practice. And every now and then I do workshop on anterior and posterior composite restoration in Japan. If you are interested, please visit the workshop. And I am very honored to speak in International Aesthetic Master 2017 and would like to thank Dr. Joan for giving me this opportunity. And once again, thank you for watching the lecture, and if you see me someplace in the world, please say hi to me. Okay, bye bye.